I'm going to try to start slightly punctual so that we have enough time to just enjoy each other's company. And tonight we also have special treats of various kinds. So I want to really leave a good time for you all. It's a pleasure to see you. And I am Paola Antonelli. I founded this R&D initiative at MoMA 2 years ago. And we've now reached our Salon number 10. You know, we have these salons. Many of you are veterans, so you might know. We have salons every other month or more or less. Sometimes we let more time go by. But they're usually about topics that are relevant not only to the museum, not only to you, but hopefully also to the world at large. And lately, we've had a series of 3 salons. This is the 3rd one. That are about the object. The object meaning anything that is not us. It could be a real object, tangible. It could be an interface. It could be a network. Anything that is other than the self. Let's be very semiotic about it. And the first salon was about the object online. It was talking about having objects from the physical world brought onto the digital or into or onto the digital world for purposes of retail, of study, of research, you name it. The second was the object, offline, objects that are born digital, not because they are code, sometimes they're just crowd-funded and crowdsourced, and then become physical in the physical world. This 3rd salon is about the object, connected, which is the Internet of Things, of course, but it's also networks, infrastructure, and it's what we have been dealing with pretty much since the middle of the 20th century when we started thinking about an Internet of Things and a network of objects that are all connected. Dystopia, utopia, you name it. It's something that we're going to tackle today with 4+1 great speakers. And we're going to think about it in the context of a museum and in the world at large. The Internet of Things and all of these different networks have been called in so many different ways. Ubiquitous technology, Ubicom, networked objects, smart objects, wearable technology, SPIMES by somebody called Bruce Sterling in 2005, everywhere, you name them. But it all has to do with objects that are connected, usually to a digital network, and that communicate data amongst themselves and also sometimes talking to us. We're not very necessary already and will be even less necessary in the future. But so far, we still have to put toasts in the toaster and turn around the thermostat or communicate with the thermostat. 1966 is when Carl Steinbuch said that in a few decades' time, computers would be interwoven into almost every industrial product. Well, it's reality right now. We'll see some pretty interesting examples of computers interwoven into things tonight. But in 1999, Neil Gross, who was a journalist for Business Week, talked about the electronic skin that the planet would don in just a few years. And truly, this kind of surface of conductive skin is something that we're seeing already happening. It's a metaphor, but it's also a reality. And various graphs have been seen already about the Internet of Things. This is an infographic that sees the Internet of Things starting about in 2008, which is when more objects than people were connected over the Internet, at least according to this particular graph. And we are over there, 18.2 billion objects connected, and in 2020 it will be 50.1 billion objects. It's hard to imagine how they calculated this. It's definitely mind-boggling. I think they probably just made it up, and I would allow them to, but it's very, very impressive. So the most profound technologies, however, are those that disappear. It's something that all designers know and crave, and it's something that was really cast in stone by Mark Weiser in 1991. These technologies weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. So at the beginning, in order to communicate, we saw the barcode. You see there the original patent that Mr. Woodland filed in 1952 for the first barcode, which happened to be a Wrigley's chewing gum. And then we see the RFID tags that were instead filed by Mr. Cipolla. Oh my God, I can never remember his name. I wanted to read it and it's not readable. So Italian-American professor in 1973. And then we see what we have today. Just being, just existing is enough to communicate. Those little things over there are Matt's work with others at Berg together with Dentsu London, they are the Suwapus, which were recognized by a phone app and applied into an augmented reality app. And this is what happens when technology completely disappears. We have to invent a new code to communicate. When we have this kind of touch communication, we have to signal what's going to happen if you approach an object. You have to be aware that communication is going to happen. And Timo Arnold did this beautiful graph language for touch, a way to let people know a sensor is here, and this is what's going to happen. But going back to the history of the Internet of Things, since the beginning was about pretty ridiculous stunts, and it hasn't changed that much even to this day. It's a way to sometimes get the best and the worst out of engineers and out of coders of all kinds and out of artists too, best and worst. The first example that is very well known was not the Internet toaster, was actually the Carnegie Mellon Computer Sciences Coke vending machine, which had sensors that let people know how much Coke and how cold it was. It still exists as a website, and it's maintained in the, I think they have a museum at CSU. But then came the Internet toaster by John Romkey. It was a toaster that still had to be fed by hand at least for 2 years, after which a robot hand was devised that could actually insert the toaster. But it was commanded by the Internet, and the Internet, a person on the Internet could decide how dark the toast had to be. Very useful and really a big increase of power in the world. And then came the Trojan Room coffee pot that was about letting people at the Cambridge Computer Lab know if the coffee was ready or not, so they wouldn't have to trek all across the building to go to the coffee pot and find it empty. So very important applications of the first examples of the Internet of Things. And even today, we have some really meaningful, well, let's just say it. It's very easy to be cute in the world of the Internet of Things. And you see here various applications, the ambient worm, the Nabas tag, Sense Mother. These are all cute objects, cute pets, cute companions that let us know whether it's raining, if the stocks are up or down, if our mother is calling or not. You know, just all of these different things that we couldn't otherwise do just by answering the phone or looking at the computer. So it's interesting to be able to populate our life with these objects, with sensors that tell us how it's that. But let's go now to something a little more functional, which is, for instance, knowing if your eggs are still good in the fridge or if they are already past their expiration date. This is the Egg Minder by Quirky. Seriously speaking, Quirky, the company that you already know very well, about a few months ago said that they were going to go into the Internet of Things business by opening a companion company that would actually work on networked objects. So it's very interesting. And of course, we all know about Nest Labs that's been bought by Apple, which by Google. Yes. Google, sorry, by Google. Sorry. I'm so sorry. But that's been bought by Google. That is about not only this, but also smoke sensors, but is one of the few commercially successful applications of the Internet of Things that really percolated down to popular culture and not only to this room. And of course, Rob Faludi, Kate Hartman, and Katie London, the botanicals, the lovely, lovely sensors that allow plants to communicate with us and even tweet and let us know how they're feeling, how wet they are, and how much they need, and how much light and temperature they need. Those are also part of the MoMA collection, by the way. And Philips Hue Lighting, light that adjusts to your mood and that enables you to adjust your mood consequently. So a biofeedback of sort in the Internet of Things. Great company, big company like General Electric plugged into this idea of the Internet of Things early on. And you see here an interface from 2010 that is called GE Ecomagination, the idea that you could connect many of the objects in your house and find out how much they consume. I'm looking for the, over 20% of the total energy consumption in the United States is residential. So you can see how a network like this could really help reduce consumption and could really help reduce also cost, individual cost. So it's a very mindful application of the Internet of Things. But of course, it gets immediately into this dystopian idea of the house that comments on the habit of the owner. You see here, did you see what time you got in last night? Scandalous. And of course, you probably all know that this really happens in the House of Coates. You know, this is the house of Tom Coates in San Francisco. Francisco that actually tweets information about, the last time that Tom weighed himself and he's actually getting chubby. And it really transforms that into commentary on its owner. So it's not only networked objects, it's really personalized objects. And it's also objects that measure and critique us and just like put us in our place every single day. The quantified self is something that I personally have never been able to subscribe to, maybe because I've always felt that I was overweight and I've never weighed myself, and I don't want a machine to measure and monitor me every single day. But this is what these machines do, from the Jawbone app and the TelSpec, which is a Bluetooth sensor that can look at the food in your plate and tell you what the calories are just by looking at it. The sleep monitor and the mug that makes sure that you don't put too much cream in your coffee. Well, the truth is that when they are actually assembled, some of this data can provide interesting behavioral information, like the Jawbone data is all assembled into a big measurement of how Americans are behaving. But nonetheless, the quantified self is something that one really has to buy into, and that also could give some anxiety. But from the quantified self, we also can go to the expressive or the hyper-expressive self. I would buy into this, actually. I would get myself cat ears that are connected to sensors that measure my brain waves and see what mood I'm in, and therefore show, by perking up or being slightly down depressed, show how I'm feeling. Actually, I would like a tail very much, a tail which moves when I'm excited. This is possible. And, if I were in Japan, I would probably wear it. Here in New York, I don't think it would fly, but, and MoMA maybe. I really like this way to show what mood one's in this particular way. Smart buildings, smart elevators like the 2006 new algorithm-based sensor-fueled elevators that you can try also at the Marriott Marquis here in Times Square that actually save 30% of time waiting. We would need them at MoMA. That save 30% time waiting for the elevator. Or that beautiful Sauerbruch-Hutton GSW headquarters in Berlin. Actually, we have that model in the collection, which is one of the first buildings that was really wired with sensors that enables a reduction of consumption of energy of about 33% a year compared to a building not equipped with those sensors. I'm not going to go into many details, but it's about the louvers and the change of the 3 types of louvers that can orientate themselves according to the needs and the sun and the filtering, and also all sorts of cooling and heating of the building. Then sometimes the sensors are just about communicating messages. So UN Studio Galleria Centricity in Korea does not do much more than communicating its data from the inside, but still it's a nice way to be transparent. The city has become smarter and smarter. Well, it's always been smarter, but it's been developed in a much more communicative way. And here are just 2 examples. The point sign by Breakfast, you might be familiar with. It's a signage system that is actually sensitive to its location and to its time. So it can tell you a particular conference that you're looking for. It can orientate themselves in the right direction and tell you it's there. Or you can command it with I think that Yelp is connected to it, Foursquare for sure, so you can ask for a particular breakfast place or the best breakfast place. So it's a truly interactive and communicative signage system. While instead the blind maps is only a prototype, it's part of a school program actually in Scandinavia, and it's about enabling blind people with braille signage to navigate the city. So it's a braille navigator that is constantly updated and constantly communicative. Of course, we all know about the importance of networks when it comes to connected objects, and especially when it comes to the city. The whole discussion about the Google self-driving cars enabled us to understand much more the importance of the network and the infrastructure, which are objects unto themselves, as also Matt pointed out in some of his texts. We have to start considering infrastructure a form of design and something that has an agency of its own. Some designers have also jumped on the idea of the self-driving cars and have begun designing kind of fancier models. This is Dominic Wilcox, who just introduced in London this stained glass driverless sleeper car of the future. So why should they be so, wait, let me use the laser pointer. Why should they be so cartoon-like? Couldn't they be more artsy? So it's a whole movement for self-driving cars and a whole field of design that's about to be open. Studio Rosegarde, Dan Rosegarde, started thinking of a smart highway that employs many different technologies that could be step-by-step introduced in highways in Europe, from a way to charge electrical cars as they go by induction, to having sensors, to having reflective paint. So it's a very applicable and a very implementable system to upgrade highways in Europe, and that's why it's been considered so intelligent by so many of, at least the Netherlands, politicians. And this is instead Streetline Parker, which has been implemented already in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. There are these little sensors here that communicate with a data center that's actually in Dallas, and then loop back onto an app that tells you which parking spaces are available. It's staggering how much energy gets and how much traffic gets generated by people looking for parking spots in cities. So this is a real problem that can be solved by means of the network. I was telling you how the network is an object unto itself. MIT Sensible City produced this really great project in 2011 for the exhibition that we had here that was called Talk to Me. It's called Backtalk, and it was the ability to embed these very cheap sensors in technology that then would be just thrown away or recycled elsewhere all over the world. So the idea was to be able to follow the path of electric waste and electronic waste, and in some cases even see where one's computer would land when it would be recycled by somebody else on the other side of the world. A nice way to keep track of the afterlife of objects. And it's very clear that when the network has an agency of its own, the objects that are connected to it almost become actors in the network's play. And SPIMEs, this is the definition that Bruce gave in his book Shaping Things in 2005. SPIMEs are manufactured objects whose informational support is so overwhelmingly extensive and rich that they are regarded as material instantiations of an immaterial system. So they are the representations of the network. SPIMEs begin and end as data. They are designed on screens, fabricated by digital means, and precisely tracked through space and time throughout their earthly sojourn. So this is really a manifestation, a description of what we're talking about. And that's also what we tried to portray in the exhibition Talk to Me. And many of you in this room, I realize, were part of an exhibition, of that exhibition one way or the other. It was really about the fact that objects communicate with people verbally, non-verbally, through networks, directly, through a local area network, a LAN of things, as is in one of the essays that I sent you. And they also produce anxieties. And we will talk also about smart anxiety and the desire to camouflage, to kind of disappear from the watchful eye of technology. One can do so with reflective clothing and complete camouflage, or through another form of camouflage, which is normcore. Wearing your dad's clothes and not standing out in any way. I love this definition by Cahill of normcore that's now also percolated down to Lucky magazine, so I guess we'll have to find something else. But it really is interesting, the desire to disappear. We were talking about technology disappearing, now we want to disappear from the eye of technology. And of course, the anxiety goes to the hacking problem. Dick Cheney's wireless heart monitor, he disconnected it once because he was afraid of an assassination attempt. And the FOSCAM, the baby monitor, when a baby cam was hacked, and the parents that were downstairs heard somebody scream epithets at the baby upstairs trying to wake her up. I mean, it's like one of the scariest things on earth. Can you imagine? And then when the father went upstairs, the camera started screaming at him. So it really is the most amazing form of intrusion. Now, not to mention the smart contact lenses that Google and Novartis are working on, which could be very good because they can monitor your glucose in your tears, they can deliver medication, or they can just like zap your eye and kill you with a ninja. I mean, really, so it really is. Smart anxieties, I'm here for you. Matt has something to say. So This is a great definition by the same Mark Weiser. Ubiquitous computing is roughly the opposite of virtual reality. Where virtual reality puts people inside a computer-generated world, ubiquitous computing forces the computer to live out here in the world with people. So it can be this kind of cute wave where everything is blue and orange and the wave is green and there's network consumer electronics industries and then networked everything, society, but everything is nice and pretty. Or it could be this great new trashy movie that just came out this year, Transcendence, in which Johnny Depp dies because he's poisoned with polonium and then finds a way to come back and using nanotechnology create an army of monsters. So everything is connected and networked and we're all going to die. To discuss these matters tonight and the singularity, we have 4 great, outstanding speakers, and I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say in order of appearance, it's going to be first Fiona Romeo, then Jill Magid, then Kate Crawford, then Matt Jones, and then the surprise. I'm going to start with Fiona Romeo, who's the inaugural director of digital content and strategy for MoMA, but she comes from the Greenwich Museums in England. She was directing the National Maritime Museum's online efforts, and she's done amazing things in museums. And she's a great dear colleague. And is this your first public speech at MoMA? Yay, so let's give her a big round of applause. Fiona Romeo.